Hey there, Cinemaster fans! Hope you're ready for some movie magic. Let's dive right in. The series begins in the city of Atlanta with a woman named Nicole and her young son, Dion. Nicole and Dion have just moved to Atlanta and are living alone because Dion's father has passed away. Nicole tries to balance raising Dion and managing her job, but she struggles to do so. Most of the time, she ends up being late for work because of Dion. One morning, Dion is having breakfast while Nicole waits for him to finish so she can take him to school and then head to work. After finishing his breakfast, Dion accidentally spills some food, but to his surprise, the food stays floating in the air in a strange and shocking way. Dion are stunned by what they see. Dion starts to believe he has superpowers. When Nicole walks into the kitchen, Dion gets distracted, causing the floating food to fall to the ground. Nicole gets upset when she sees the mess but doesn't have time to clean it because she's already late for work. She quickly takes Dion to school and rushes to her job. On the way, Dion tries to convince his mother that he has superpowers and can control things with his mind. However, Nicole doesn't believe him, thinking it's just his imagination since he loves comic books and superhero stories. When they arrive at school, it's Dion's first day, and he tries to make friends with his classmates. Unfortunately, the other kids ignore him and don't show interest in getting to know him. Nicole watches this from a distance, feeling sad for her son. She then notices the time and realizes she's very late for work, so she leaves for her job. While on her way, Nicole gets a call from her boss, who informs her that she's fired because this isn't the first time she's been late. Nicole is deeply upset because she struggled to find this job, and she is the sole provider for her son, with many responsibilities to manage. Feeling down, Nicole meets up with her friends to share what happened. They try to comfort her and assure her that things will get better. Afterward, Nicole leaves to pick up Dion from school. However, when she arrives, she can't find him. Panicked, she searches for him until she finds him playing in an area a bit far from the school. She scolds him for not waiting for her and for causing her to worry. Nicole takes Dion home, and when they arrive, they find a young man named Pat waiting for them. Pat is a close friend of Dion's father and often visits them to check on how they're doing and to play with Dion. Pat offers to take Dion out for a while, promising Nicole they won't be late. Nicole agrees, and Pat and Dion leave together. During their outing, they talk and joke around until Dion asks Pat about his father and how he died. Dion mentions that whenever he asks his mother about it, she avoids answering. Pat hesitates but eventually tells Dion that his father was a renowned scientist specializing in storms and hurricanes. He explains that while studying a powerful storm, Dion's father had an accident and tragically passed away. They continue talking until it gets late, and Pat takes Dion back home. Later, Pat speaks privately with Nicole and mentions that Dion has started asking questions about his father's death. He advises her to be closer to Dion and not let him feel his father's absence too much. After Pat leaves, Nicole talks to Dion and tells him that she lost her job. She seems visibly upset, and Dion tries to comfort her by helping out around the house. To Nicole's shock, Dion uses his mind to move objects around the house. Overwhelmed by what she sees, Nicole yells at Dion. Frightened and nervous, Dion loses control of his powers, causing everything around them to move rapidly until everything suddenly stops and falls to the ground. Nicole, still in shock, takes Dion to her sister Kat's house to seek help. Nicole confides in Kat, who is a doctor at a major hospital, about everything that has been happening. However, Kat doesn't believe her and takes Nicole outside the hospital to speak privately. Kat questions whether Nicole is using drugs, as she had a history of doing so in the past. Nicole insists that she isn't using anything, but Kat continues to scold her, urging her to get her life together for Dion's sake. Feeling disheartened and realizing no one believes her, Nicole takes Dion back home. She sits with him and shares memories of his father, telling him they should spend some time at their lakeside house for a change of scenery. Dion agrees, and the next day, they head to the lake house, a place Nicole used to visit with her husband before his death. At the lake, Dion asks to take a boat ride and do some fishing. Nicole agrees, and they set off in the boat. Dion tries to catch some fish but has no luck, so he uses his powers to lift a large number of fish out of the water. Nicole is amazed by his abilities but asks him to return the fish to the lake, explaining that they need water to survive. When Dion tries to return the fish, he loses control of his powers, causing strong winds to blow through the area. The winds become so intense that they uproot trees and send them flying. A tree branch hits Dion, knocking him onto the boat. Everything suddenly stops, and Nicole quickly rescues Dion from falling into the water. They return home, and while Dion rests, Nicole hears him talking to someone outside the house. When she goes to investigate, she finds Dion speaking with the ghost of his died father. Nicole is both terrified and happy to see her husband's spirit. He tells her to take their son and leave immediately because they are in great danger. Before disappearing, he looks scared and worried for their safety. And Nicole doesn't understand anything and doesn't know what's happening, but she is affected because she saw her husband. The next day, Nicole is sitting watching her son while he's asleep, ensuring he's okay, until a police officer knocks on her door to check on her after the severe storm that occurred the previous night. Nicole learns from the officer that there were many losses due to the sudden storm. The officer shows her a picture of a missing girl who disappeared during the storm and hasn't been found yet. He asks her to contact him immediately if she sees the girl anywhere. He then excuses himself and leaves. Afterward, Nicole takes her son out for a walk. Nicole tries to explain to her son that he needs to control his powers because if he doesn't, he could harm many people. But since Dion is still young, he doesn't understand what his mother is saying and isn't interested. He leaves her and goes to play. Dion chases a squirrel in the forest, and when the squirrel climbs a tree, Dion wants to follow it. The surprise is that he finds himself disappearing from the ground and appearing on the tree, just as he wanted. Dion starts to realize that his powers are greater than he thought, but the problem is that he's stuck in the tree and doesn't know how to get down. He becomes very scared to the point of having a breathing crisis. He keeps calling for his mother to help him until she hears him and brings his inhaler to rescue him from the tree. She gives him the inhaler to manage his asthma attack. Afterward, they both return home. Nicole receives a call from her sister Kat, who tells her that she has arranged a job interview for her at the hospital in 2 hours and that she shouldn't miss this opportunity due to her difficult financial situation, especially since there are no other jobs available. Nicole gets ready, takes Dion, and heads back to the city because there's no one to watch him. Nicole goes to the interview, worried about Dion losing control of his powers and causing a disaster in the hospital. This makes her completely unfocused during the interview, as all her thoughts are on Dion. Eventually, she finds Dion sitting on a chair, starting to lose control of his powers, and he begins to levitate with the chair. She leaves the interview and runs to her son to stop what's happening before anyone sees him, and the situation escalates. Because Nicole neglected the interview and wasn't focused, the manager refuses to hire her. When Kat finds out what happened, she gets upset with Nicole and is puzzled by her behavior. When Nicole leaves the hospital, Kat calls Pat, telling him what happened and mentioning that she's noticed Nicole acting strangely lately. She asks him to check on Nicole and her son and spend some time with them because she's worried about Nicole and feels something is wrong. Pat agrees to do so. He buys dinner and goes to Nicole's house. He meets Nicole and they chat while he checks on her and her situation. Meanwhile, Dion is in his room watching the area, imagining himself as a superhero who wants to help and protect the people in his neighborhood from any harm. While observing the area, Dion sees a little girl drop her toy in the middle of the street. Her father doesn't notice and walks away, leaving the toy. Dion decides to move the toy with his mind to return it to the girl, but instead, he teleports himself to the toy. While standing in the middle of the street, a car speeds toward him. Nicole screams, trying to warn him. Dion gets startled and disappears from the spot before the car hits him. Reappearing next to his mother, Nicole hugs him, overwhelmed and terrified for him. Pat witnesses everything, shocked and unable to believe his eyes. Later, they all go inside the house and Nicole explains everything to Pat, revealing that Dion has superpowers. She tells him that Dion can move objects with his mind and teleport at incredible speed, but the problem is that he can't control his powers, which could lead to disasters. Pat is stunned by what he hears, but also proud and amazed by Dion. He asks Dion to move some toys with his mind to see him in action. Dion successfully moves the toys with ease, but as usual, things spiral out of control. However, they manage to contain the situation before a disaster occurs. Afterward, Nicole puts Dion to bed so he can rest. She then sits with Pat and they discuss Dion. She tells him that no one can know about Dion's powers because, if they do, the government will take him away, turn him into a lab experiment, and study him. Pat assures her that he won't tell anyone what he saw and suggests that they work together to help Dion control his powers. Nicole agrees wholeheartedly. The next day, Nicole gives Dion a wristwatch that belonged to his father, telling him that it's very special and will help him control his powers. When Dion learns this and wears the watch, his confidence grows. He tries to move objects with his mind and succeeds, gaining better control over his powers. Nicole then asks Dion to promise her that he won't use his powers publicly or let anyone know about them. Dion agrees. Nicole prepares Dion and takes him to school, encouraging him to act like any other boy his age and not make anyone feel he's different. Unfortunately, at school, a boy bullies Dion and takes his father's watch from him. Dion becomes angry and upset, using his powers to slam the boy against the wall with great force. Luckily, no one sees Dion doing this, but the boy claims that Dion hit and pushed him. When Nicole comes to pick up Dion from school, she learns that he's in the principal's office. She goes to the office where the principal tells her that her son attacked a classmate without reason and that he has no choice but to expel Dion. At that moment, the principal knows that the other boy bullied Dion first and took his father's watch. But the principal wants to expel Dion because of his dark skin, as he is very racist and supports the other boy just because he's white. However, Dion's teacher, who is also black, intervenes and threatens to expose the principal's racism and his decision to expel a student just because of his skin color. The principal gets scared and changes Dion's punishment to 1 hour of detention after school instead of expulsion. After that, Nicole goes to talk to Dion privately and tells him that he promised not to use his powers in public. Dion explains to her that what happened was out of his control and that he didn't intend to hurt the boy. His mother asks him to control himself from now on so he doesn't harm anyone else, even if that person annoys or provokes him. Nicole then has to leave Dion at school for detention and goes to spend some time with her friends until she receives a call from a woman named Charlotte. Charlotte was a colleague of Dion's father at work but had been missing since Dion's father's death, and no one knew where she was. Charlotte asks Nicole to meet her so she can explain how her husband died. Nicole is shocked and decides to meet her immediately. When Nicole meets Charlotte, she discovers that Charlotte has superpowers just like Dion. Charlotte explains that she was her husband's colleague and recounts how they once went on an expedition to Iceland to study a powerful storm. When they arrived, they realized it wasn't an ordinary storm. Strange radiation emitted from the storm, affecting the entire team, everyone on it. The expedition gained extraordinary superpowers, including Nicole's husband. However, a sinister figure began hunting down the members of the expedition, killing everyone who had acquired superpowers. This villain managed to kill most of the team, including Nicole's husband. Nicole learns that her husband didn't die a natural death as she had believed, and that Charlotte is the only surviving member of the team. Charlotte explains that she has been hiding ever since to avoid being found by this villain. Nicole is left in shock and tells Charlotte that her young son, Dion, inherited his superpowers from his father. Charlotte is alarmed and warns Nicole that she and her son are in grave danger because the villain won't stop until he finds them. Charlotte flees the location in fear, leaving Nicole terrified and unsure of how to protect her son. While Nicole is alone, she receives a message from Charlotte containing a video. The video shows a powerful storm with a massive figure made of lightning within it. Charlotte informs Nicole that this is the villain she warned her about and urges her to hide herself and her son before he finds them. The next day, Nicole speaks to Pat and tells him everything that happened, showing him a picture of the villain threatening their lives. Pat is shocked by what he hears, and they decide that Pat will look after Dion while Nicole investigates the villain further. Pat takes Dion to his workplace, which happens to be the same company where Dion's father used to work. Pat shows Dion the company, its systems for tracking storms, and introduces him to his colleagues. He also shows Dion a large picture of his father, who is considered a role model at the company. That night, they return home, and Nicole tells Dion that she found a job. They celebrate the good news together. The following day is Dion's birthday, and Nicole and Pat throw him a big party. They celebrate and have a great time. Later that night, as Dion tries to sleep, a new storm hits the city. When Dion looks at the storm from his window, he spots a massive figure within it, which frightens him deeply for reasons he doesn't understand. The next day, Dion talks to his mother about the figure he saw in the storm. Nicole becomes anxious and shows him the picture of the villain that Charlotte had sent her, asking if this is what he saw. Dion confirms that it is indeed the same figure, which makes Nicole even more fearful as she feels the villain is getting closer to them and that her son is in danger. Nicole contacts Charlotte, tells her what happened, and urgently asks for her help. Charlotte comes to the house and meets Nicole, who asks her to teach Dion how to control his powers and use them properly so he can protect himself from the villain. Charlotte agrees to help and meets Dion, introducing herself and explaining that she also has superpowers like his. After they bond, Charlotte takes Dion to the basement and begins training him to control his powers. Meanwhile, Nicole spends time with Pat, and they enjoy a pleasant outing together. The next day, Pat takes Dion to school. On the way, Pat mentions that he has been suffering from a persistent headache. Dion uses his powers to heal Pat's headache effortlessly. However, when Dion arrives at school, he feels extremely weak, prompting the school administration to call Nicole to pick him up. Since Nicole can't leave work, she asks her sister Kat to pick up Dion. Kat notices how unwell Dion is and decides to take him to the hospital for tests. At the hospital, the doctors perform scans and tests on Dion, but are unable to diagnose his condition. When Nicole finishes work, she rushes to the hospital to check on her son. Everyone is worried about Dion, especially since no one can figure out what's wrong with him. While Dion is resting in bed, he suddenly starts floating in the air in front of Kat, who finally believes he has superpowers. She apologizes to Nicole for not believing her earlier. Dion's condition worsens, and no one knows how to help him until Pat arrives and suggests increasing Dion's iodine levels. The doctors follow Pat's advice, and Dion quickly recovers, returning to his normal self as if nothing had happened. At this moment, Pat talks to Nicole privately and confesses his love for her. Nicole tells him that she doesn't feel the same way, and that she doesn't want a relationship because she is focused on her job and taking care of Dion. Pat is hurt by her response and leaves. Nicole is affected because she upset him, so she takes her son to leave the hospital. But as she's leaving, she's surprised by a group of people from the company her husband used to work for. They come to take Dion from her, claiming he has a serious illness and must be moved to quarantine. They take him away, and she can't stop them. She breaks down in tears. Later, Nicole goes to the company to ask about her son, but no one gives her a clear answer. This causes Nicole to lose, but he defeats all of them. He attacks Nicole and is about to kill her when Dion becomes enraged, loses control, and confronts Pat to save his mother. After a long battle, Dion proves stronger and defeats Pat, finally ending the threat. Nicole is overjoyed and proud of her son. They decide to start a new life together, trying to find happiness and stability. However, the entity that possessed Pat doesn't die. It leaves him and transfers to a young boy, hinting that this is not the end, or that this being is still alive and that there is definitely a second part and the series ends. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. If you did, make sure to subscribe for more awesome content. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.